Hello, and welcome back to this podcast called Bold Moves. My name is Wanjiru Kihusa, and I am the host of the podcast. In the past episodes, we've talked a lot about making audacious moves, moving away from fear, and believing and trusting in ourselves, doing the internal work of confidence. I've shared my story about how I founded my nonprofit and then relocated from Kenya and then into Dubai, and how now I am based out of London in the UK. Now, today I want us to talk about imposter syndrome and why I don't have it. I used to have it, but I don't anymore. And it's for a myriad of reasons. Now, let's start off by taking a step back. What is imposter syndrome? Of course, the word imposter means that, if you feel like a fraud, you don't belong. And so imposter syndrome is that feeling, especially when you begin to get into rooms that are of power, where you feel like, oh God, do I really belong here? I'm a fraud. I will be discovered. And they will discover that I'm not all that. And it's impacted a lot of people, and especially women, who begin to start to doubt their capabilities and abilities, and then to shrink back because they are too scared or they do not want to be discovered, quote unquote. Now, why shouldn't you have it? Let me first of all probably take a step back here and share why I don't have it or at what point in my life I overcame it. Now, I think in 2019, 2018 or 2019, can't remember the exact year, but I was smack in the middle of running Still a Mom. We were, of course, in need of funding because we were a nonprofit supporting parents who've lost a child through miscarriage, stillbirth, and infant death. And so at that time, I remember applying for what was called the Facebook Community Leadership Program. Facebook, of course, now is Meta, but back then it was Facebook, and they had a community leadership program. And I applied for it, and it entailed a year of training as a community leader, but also a $50,000 grant to the nonprofit that I was running. And so during that training, I traveled quite a bit to Menlo Park in San Francisco, the Facebook headquarters. We had a second in-person meeting in Facebook offices in Joburg for the Africa cohort, and then a final culmination back in Menlo Park when the program was coming to a close. And so I remember at the very last session back in Menlo Park, being called aside. There were about 114 of us globally, 114 or 116, can't remember the exact number, but I do remember there were 14 Africans in the program. And I remember being called aside and being told, hey, the WhatsApp developers would love to talk to you. The engineers would love to talk to you, and we're going to take you to a room where you're going to do this. Now, let me explain here a little bit. Still a Mom, when we started, we used to have in-person support groups where parents would come, sit in a circle, and bring some tea and snacks, and we would talk about, our experiences with loss, where we were in the grieving journey, and we had a structure of 5 sessions that we take the women and men through, and then we'd feel like they are able to plug back into life without being so raw with grief. Of course, the more the media caught on about the work we were doing, and I did a couple of TV interviews and radio interviews, for example, with Citizen Primetime or NTV and other media companies in Kenya. The more people started to ask, hey, do you do this in Nyeri? Do you do this in Kiambu? Oh, I am in need and I'm in Bomet, and so we were like, okay, we need to pivot. And of course, then we went virtual. And what we used to do is we started to use WhatsApp. And so we'd put these women and men in a group, the bereaved parents in a group. And I was working alongside several counselors at the time, and they'd run the group. So people would come in, they'd introduce themselves. We'd try and mimic the same things that happens in an in-person group, in the WhatsApp support group. And so that's what we were doing. And it was amazing. At some point, it was so busy. I remember we started to name the groups by month, like October. And then we'd even say October 1, October 2, meaning, there are several groups running concurrently, run by different counselors. And so that was the model and that we used to scale. Now, fast forward, I'm in Menlo Park in San Francisco. I've been taken aside. The rest of the people in the program are going on with, I think, a different session. And so I walk into the room, and it is packed with engineers. and this is in the US. And then they're in the room, there are cameras and people, TV screens, and people are also calling in from, the Singapore, London office, several of their global offices. And essentially what they wanted me to do was explain what I was doing with the platform, because they were looking to see how they were going to improve it. And so I spoke about what we were doing, what our challenges were, and what I was hoping the WhatsApp team could also help us with in terms of security and safety, because these were women and men who were coming in a very vulnerable place. And I remember pausing at the time and looking at myself and thinking, oh my God, where am I? Look around. And I looked around and I saw all of these people, engineers, builders, developers, taking notes, and their commitment to the fact that they were going to use these notes to then improve the product that was going to go back to the masses. And it was at that moment that I thought, I have something to say, and it matters. And people of color will get this, and especially Africans, because I feel like we've also put white people, especially white men, on a pedestal. But this was the first time I was a woman of color, an African, and white men were taking notes and listening keenly to what I had to say. You need to sit in your place of the fact that I am here. And for as long as I am here, I'm going to have my voice heard. I'm going to give my opinion. I'm going to share my knowledge and all of that. So there's one, God brought you there. Or there's a reason. If you're not a person of faith, just believe that you are in that room for a reason. The second thing is that there's no wasted experience. And this is to say that I feel like imposter syndrome robs us of truly taking in the experience, from the room. So let's say you're in a meeting, as I have found myself most recently this week. I got to meet Filippo Grandi, who is the UNHCR High Commissioner, on a private sector executive roundtable, like less than 20 people in the room. And we were talking about how private sector can respond to what's going on in the humanitarian space. So let me give that as an example. Now, imposter syndrome robs me the opportunity to be like, oh, wow, I have so much to learn from this experience. Imposter syndrome would have made me feel you don't belong in this room. And so I would have shrunk away and I would not have taken all the value that I could get from that room. So whether it's in a classroom setup, for example, in the university, you're in college, you belong in that classroom and you want to get as much value as possible. And you can't do that if you already feel that you don't belong and you should be in the back, making sure that you're as small as possible and you don't want even to be discovered. Then you're missing out the opportunity to learn and to grow. The third and final one I want to talk about is that imposter syndrome is a privilege we can't afford. If you're a minority, this is for you. I am finding myself constantly in rooms where I am the voice for the global South. A lot of policies and decisions are being made about us, and there are not a whole lot of us in those rooms. I sit in meetings, for example, here in London or in Geneva or wherever other places, and I look around and I'm like, oof, they're discussing Africa. How many Africans are in the room? And sometimes I'm not the only one. Thankfully, other times I am. Imposter syndrome would have told me, oh, be scared, don't talk. Don't be present in the room, hide away. But that's a privilege I cannot afford. If I don't speak up for my people, so to speak, whether that's Kenyan issues are being discussed, African issues are being discussed, or generally the global South, that is as it's known in these development spaces, then who will speak for our people, And so again, look around you. And if you are a minority, you need to speak up against the establishment, so to speak, but you need to bring the voice of the many into the room. And this also applies even if you're a majority. Imposter syndrome is going to rob you of the opportunity to speak in rooms, even for the people that are not in that room. So we have a responsibility twofold. If you're a majority person, then speak up for the people who are not in that room. If you're a minority and you've made your way into the room, oh God, you cannot afford to be silent. This is not the time to start to self-guess, And so now that we've talked about what it is, why you shouldn't have it, and let's talk about how do you overcome it. At the core of imposter syndrome is the feeling that you don't belong. is a feeling that you're not enough. And so I would recommend starting with positive self-talk. There's a ton of research that says whatever we tell ourselves becomes it. The same thing we talk about as parents and our kids. If you tell your kids they can't, then they won't. They'll believe you and they won't. The same with our brain. So if you constantly tell yourself that you can't do it, you don't belong here, you're a fraud, you're an imposter, that's what you will believe. Yeah? Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not advocating for us to become narcissists and to be full of ourselves and to have ego rise and to think there's no one better in this room than me. That's not the other extreme I'm talking about. No, I'm talking about positive talk of saying, you know what, I've earned this, or God has brought me into this room and I deserve to be in this room. And because of that, I'm going to have my voice heard. So positive self-talk, a reminding of yourself that you're qualified. So it could be that you have the knowledge. It could be, you have the papers to show for it, or it could even be that you have lived experience. There's something you're bringing. And remember, diversity, regardless of what's going on with DEI in the US and around the world, diversity of thought is always appreciated. In a room, there shouldn't be a homogeneous voice, only one person saying, the similar voices saying the same thing. No, you bring the diversity of thought. You bring the thing that's different that makes people think, we hadn't thought about that before. And so start with positive self-talk, reminding yourself that you are worthy and you trust yourself. The second would be continuous learning. Okay, so if your imposter syndrome comes from the fact that you feel like you don't have the skills or the knowledge, you're starting to feel like, the kind of topics that have been discussed in this room, I don't have that level of knowledge. Then do something about it, fix it. When you now go back out of the room, go aggressively close that knowledge gap. Is it a course you need to take? Do you need to sit with, if, for example, you're a majority and the kind of work that you do requires for you to speak up for minorities, spend some time with that group. Go and have coffee with somebody who doesn't look like you and just understand. It might be not your lived experience. It might be the lived experience of somebody else that you need to bring along into the room. And so continuous learning, grow. That gap you're seeing, fix it, right? It's a nice way to stop feeling that you don't belong in that room. So I will give you an example. I started the current job that I'm doing as a humanitarian relief director last year in 2024. It's a new space. I have worked in corporate, correct. I have run a nonprofit and worked in the nonprofit space for about 8-9 years now. And now I'm in the humanitarian space. Now, I didn't know too much except the fact that I am in the logistics space. I work for UPS, so I am moving a lot of goods for the UN. So I already knew a little bit about that background. I've funded nonprofits, so I get that part. But I didn't have an understanding of the humanitarian space, the humanitarian community, And so early this year, January, one of my goals for self-development was to take a few courses on humanitarian relief. And so I just finished a course that's run by Harvard Humanitarian Initiative called Humanitarian Emergencies and Action. Yeah, something like that. And so I just finished it. It was so illuminating. I got to learn about the Serbia war and the genocide in Rwanda. I got to learn about Somalia, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and, for example, the migration and the refugee situations causes, and how various times the humanitarian has responded and the learnings that they've learned along the way. And so that's one. Currently, I'm quite curious about the role AI plays in the humanitarian space. And so I've enrolled for a course for that. So again, close that knowledge gap if the issue is you're feeling you don't know. And finally, surround yourself with good support systems. Get you a mentor. Find you a mentor who can take you from where you are to where you want to be. And maybe on another topic, on another episode, we can talk about mentorship and how to grow as a mentor, how to get the most value as a mentee. But for now, look for a mentor. Could be somebody in your organization, could be somebody you look up to. And thankfully, there are things, LinkedIn has come in to make things a lot easier. You can easily write someone an email, a message and say, my name is so-and-so. I'm looking to learn about XYZ in this field. And I see that you're an expert in it. Would you be willing to jump on a quick call for 30 minutes and I'd like to pick your brain. I have done that a ton of times. Nobody has ever said no. Surround yourselves with mentors. Attend events. Talk to your family and friends. Go to communities that if you're a techie, you're a developer, for example, attend those events. Build that level of community. Your confidence will keep getting higher and higher and higher, and slowly but surely, you will kill this imposter syndrome monster. So I hope this episode has been inspiring for you. I hope you've learned what imposter syndrome is, why you shouldn't have it, and that you have now learned how some of the ways, I know it was not exhaustive, some of the ways that you can overcome this monster. And soon we will stop talking about imposter syndrome. Now, remember, a little feeling of butterflies is good for you. It keeps you human, right? It keeps you prepared. So if you're going to go, for example, you're presenting to a room, regardless of the size, and you're feeling butterflies in your stomach, that's good. That means you're a human being, and a little being scared is okay. That's not imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome is feeling you don't belong there and you're a fraud. That's something entirely different. The butterflies in your stomach are good because they help you prep. They help you bring your A game. They help you do the work that you're supposed to do. And then when you go to the platform, wherever it is, you can present what it is or talk about that topic that you want to talk about. All right, this brings me to the end of this episode. I hope it's been beneficial for you. Please let me know how your journey away from imposter syndrome is going. I'd love to hear your feedback about the episode as well. Drop us a note, review, drop me an email on wanjirukihusa@gmail.com if you'd like to have a deeper conversation or you have a question you believe I could answer. Thank you very much.